Restaurant owner hires homeless man for a job. What happens next is shocking. The morning sun had barely peeked through the tall windows of Grayson's Bistro when the staff began filing in for their pre-shift meeting. The restaurant sat nestled between a high-end boutique and an artisanal coffee shop on Maple Avenue, not quite downtown, but prestigious enough that the clientele expected a certain polish. White tablecloths, gleaming silverware, and servers who looked like they'd stepped out of a catalog were part of what made Grayson's the talk of the town. Amanda, the head waitress, arranged her blonde hair into a perfect bun as she chatted with Zach, the bartender whose family connections had landed him the coveted weekend shifts. They were the unofficial leaders of what the kitchen staff called the Pretty Committee, front-of-house employees who treated the restaurant floor like their personal runway. "Did you see what Table 7 tipped last night?" Amanda grinned, flashing her perfectly whitened teeth. $200 on a $500 check. "I'm telling you, it's all about the personal touch." Zach nodded, scrolling through his phone. "And looking the part. Nobody tips like that when they're served by someone who looks like they don't belong here." Their conversation halted as Mr. Grayson emerged from his office. Unlike most restaurant owners who dress to impress, Richard Grayson was a study in understated authority. His chambray button-down and dark jeans communicated that he was both the boss and someone who wasn't afraid to help clean a spill if needed. At 52, with salt and pepper hair and laugh lines that deepened when he smiled, he commanded respect without demanding it, usually. "Morning, everyone," he said, his voice cutting through the chatter. "Before we go over today's specials and reservations, I'd like to introduce our newest team member." The staff straightened, curious eyes darting to the office door. New hires were rare at Grayson's. The place had a waiting list of applicants desperate to work in one of the city's most profitable establishments. What emerged from the office was not what anyone expected. A man in his late 40s shuffled forward, his gaze fixed on the polished concrete floor. His beard was unkempt, his clothes clean but worn to transparency in places. The faded flannel shirt hung from shoulders that seemed to cave inward, as if he were trying to disappear into himself. His hands, rough, with cracked skin around the knuckles, fidgeted at his sides. The silence in the restaurant was absolute. Even the kitchen's usual clanging had stopped as the line cooks leaned through the service window to get a look. "This is Hank," Mr. Grayson said, placing a firm hand on the man's shoulder. "He's joining our back-of-house team as a kitchen assistant, starting today." Amanda's perfectly shaped eyebrows shot up as she exchanged a glance with Zach, whose smile had frozen into something closer to a grimace. The line cook, Marcus, muttered something that made the dishwasher next to him snicker. "Hank has experience in food service," Mr. Grayson continued, either oblivious to or ignoring the reactions. "And he'll be helping with prep, cleaning, and whatever else chef needs. I expect everyone to show him the same respect you show each other." The uncomfortable silence persisted until Chef Luis cleared his throat. "Welcome aboard," he said, though his tone suggested anything but welcome. "We start prep in 10. I'll show you where everything is." As Mr. Grayson retreated to his office and Chef Luis led Hank to the kitchen, the whispers erupted like a dam breaking. "Is he serious?" Amanda hissed, huddling with Zach and two other servers. "That guy looks like he's been living under the overpass by the river. I've seen him there. My car better still be in the parking lot at the end of my shift." Zach muttered, half joking but with an edge that made it clear he wasn't entirely kidding. In the kitchen, the reception wasn't any warmer. Chef Luis, known for running a tight ship, showed Hank to a small locker where he could store his few belongings. "Listen," Luis said quietly, making sure they were out of earshot of Mr. Grayson's office. "I don't know what kind of charity case you are to the boss, but in my kitchen, you work or you walk. Got it?" Hank nodded, his eyes briefly meeting the chef's before dropping again. "Yes, chef. I appreciate the opportunity." Luis seemed taken aback by the clarity and depth of Hank's voice. It didn't match the defeated slump of his posture. "Right. Well, start by mopping the walk-in. Then the bathrooms need attention. After that, see Marcus for grease trap duty. If Hank recognized that he was being assigned the tasks no one else wanted, he didn't show it. He simply nodded again, found the mop closet where Louise pointed, and got to work. Throughout that first morning, Hank moved like a ghost through the restaurant, quietly completing each unpleasant task without complaint. When he finished mopping the walk-in refrigerator until it gleamed, he moved on to the bathrooms, scrubbing until the porcelain fixtures reflected the overhead lights. The grease traps, which hadn't been properly cleaned in weeks despite the health code requirements, took him over an hour of disgusting labor. From her station setting up the dining room, Amanda watched Hank through the kitchen door. "Seriously, what was Grayson thinking?" she whispered to Tina, another server. "This is a premium establishment, not a homeless shelter." Tina shrugged, folding cloth napkins into perfect swans. "Maybe he knows him from somewhere? Or it's court-mandated community service or something? Well, he better stay in the back. If customers see him, they'll think we've lowered our standards." The lunch rush came and went in a blur of activity. Hank remained in the background, washing dishes when the machine backed up, mopping spills, and running clean utensils to the line when they ran low. Not once did he stop to rest or check his phone, unlike most of the staff who found moments to disappear for bathroom breaks that conveniently coincided with social media updates. As the afternoon lull settled in, Mr. Grayson emerged from his office where he'd been working on the books. He found Hank in the dry storage area, meticulously organizing shelves that had been in disarray for months. "How's the first day going?" he asked, his voice gentler than the one he used with the rest of the staff. Hank straightened, a hint of a smile visible through his beard. "Good, sir. Thank you for the chance. You don't need to call me sir, Hank. Richard is fine. Or Grayson, like everyone else calls me." Hank nodded but didn't respond. His eyes, a startling clear blue that contrasted with his weathered face, held something that Grayson recognized: pride carefully guarded against disappointment. "The staff," Grayson started, then paused, choosing his words. "They'll come around. They're good people deep down. Just give them time." "I'm used to it," Hank said simply, returning to his task. As Grayson walked away, he passed the server station where Zach was showing Amanda something on his phone, both of them laughing. They straightened quickly when they saw him. "Something funny?" Grayson asked, his tone neutral but his eyes sharp. "Just a meme, boss," Zach said, quickly pocketing his phone. Grayson held his gaze a moment longer than necessary before nodding. "Prep for dinner service starts in 20. After he walked away, Amanda leaned in to whisper, "Do you think he saw what was on your phone?" Zach shook his head. "No way. Besides, it's just a joke. Take your homeless person to work day. It's not like the guy can see it." But across the restaurant, a young waitress named Maya overheard them and frowned, her eyes darting to where Hank worked silently in the storeroom. She opened her mouth as if to say something, then closed it again, returning to polishing water spots off wine glasses. In the kitchen, a shy busboy named Eli was struggling with a stack of heavy plates when one slipped, crashing to the floor. He braced himself for Chef Luis's notorious temper, but before the chef could react, Hank was there with a broom and dustpan. "Happens to everyone," Hank said quietly to the wide-eyed teenager as he efficiently swept up the ceramic shards. "No harm done." Eli blinked in surprise at the kindness, mumbling a thank you before scurrying off with the remaining plates. As the day wound to a close and the dinner service approached, the whispers about the new hire had already cemented into a narrative. Hank was Mr. Grayson's charity project, a homeless man given a pity job, someone to be tolerated but not accepted. The nickname, Dumpster Dave, had already spread through the kitchen staff, despite the fact that everyone knew his name was Hank. No one noticed the small security camera in the corner of the dry storage room, its red light blinking as it captured every interaction, every whispered comment, and every sidelong glance. No one except Mr. Grayson, who sat in his office reviewing the footage with an unreadable expression on his face. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the restaurant in golden light as the evening customers began to arrive. Another shift was beginning at Grayson's Bistro, and for the new kitchen assistant, the real test was just beginning. 2 weeks had passed since Hank's arrival, and the initial wariness had morphed into something uglier. What began as whispers now echoed loudly through the kitchen when Hank stepped outside for his break. The nickname, Dumpster Dave, had stuck, despite everyone knowing his real name. "I swear he's wearing the same shirt as yesterday," Amanda remarked during the afternoon lull, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Does he even own a washing machine?" The truth was that Hank rotated between 3 identical flannel shirts, each washed meticulously in the restaurant's utility sink after hours when he thought no one was watching. But perception had already hardened into reality for the staff. What none of them could deny, however, was Hank's work ethic. He arrived 30 minutes before his shift started. He never complained, even when Marcus, accidentally, spilled a container of fish sauce on the floor Hank had just mopped. And somehow, he finished his assigned tasks with enough time to help others with theirs. "Man doesn't even take proper breaks," Chef Luis commented to his sous chef. "Just sits on the back step eating whatever leftovers we're tossing." The sous chef shrugged. "Free labor is free labor. But did you notice he fixed the walk-in door hinge that's been sticking for months? Guy knows his way around tools." Such observations might have softened attitudes if given time, but the front-of-house team had already decided who Hank was, an unwelcome intrusion in their polished world. Zach took particular pleasure in making Hank's job harder. On Tuesday, he hid all the cleaning supplies in his car, watching with barely concealed amusement as Hank searched every closet. "Looking for something?" Zach asked innocently as Hank finally approached the bar. "The all-purpose cleaner and mop head seem to be missing," Hank replied, his voice soft but steady. "Weird," Zach said, twirling a cocktail stirrer. "Maybe check the dumpster outside? Might feel like home to you anyway." Several nearby servers snickered. Hank's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, not anger, but a deep, resigned understanding. "I'll check there," he said, turning away. Watching from the espresso machine was Maya, the youngest server on staff. Her face flushed with second-hand embarrassment. She waited until Hank was outside before confronting Zach. "That was cruel," she said quietly. Zach rolled his eyes. "It was a joke, Maya. Lighten up. Not my fault the guy can't take a hint that he doesn't belong here. He works harder than you do," she countered, then immediately regretted the comment as Zach's expression darkened. "Careful," he warned. "Remember who does the schedule around here when Grayson's not looking. Would be a shame to lose your Saturday shifts." In the corner, Eli the busboy watched the exchange silently. At 17, he was saving every penny for community college, and Grayson's paid better than anywhere else that would hire him. He'd found a small brown bag in the alley the day before, Hank's lunch, he realized, watching the older man unwrap a simple sandwich on his break. Later, when no one was looking, Eli had slipped his own apple onto the shelf where Hank kept his things. The petty torments continued. Someone placed a dirty mop head in Hank's locker. Servers forgot to scrape plates before handing them to him at the dishwashing station, leaving him to fish out napkins and lemon wedges from the disposal by hand. A crude drawing appeared on the staff bulletin board, a cartoon of a bearded man sleeping in a cardboard box labeled "Employee Housing." Through it all, Mr. Grayson was conspicuously absent from the floor, locked in his office reviewing invoices and making calls. But the red light on the security cameras continued to blink, capturing everything. Late Thursday evening, after a particularly busy service, Hank found a note taped to his time card. "Streets are cleaner than your hands. Quit." He carefully folded the note and tucked it into his pocket, his face betraying nothing. What no one saw was Mr. Grayson watching the security monitor as Hank discovered the note. The owner's normally genial expression hardened into something unrecognizable, calculation mixed with barely controlled anger. That night, after everyone had left, Mr. Grayson beckoned to Hank as he was preparing to leave. "A moment in my office?" Hank followed silently, his shoulders rigid with what looked like resignation. The door closed behind them. Outside in the dark parking lot, Maya paused by her car, watching the light in Grayson's office. She couldn't hear what was being said, but she saw shadows move behind the blinds. When Hank emerged 10 minutes later, she ducked behind her car, not wanting to be seen. To her surprise, Hank was smiling faintly as he walked toward the bus stop. And as he passed beneath a streetlight, she could have sworn she saw him straighten to his full height, the perpetual stoop suddenly gone from his shoulders. Friday night at Grayson's Bistro was always electric. The restaurant hummed with conversation, clinking glasses, and the controlled chaos of a kitchen running at full capacity. Tonight was particularly busy. A food critic from the city newspaper was rumored to be among the guests, and tensions ran high. Chef Luis barked orders with more edge than usual. Servers darted between tables with plastered smiles hiding their anxiety. In the dish pit, Hank worked tirelessly, the steam making his flannel shirt cling to his back. "We're out of clean wine glasses," Amanda called through the service window, her carefully applied makeup already wilting from the heat. "On it," Hank replied, abandoning the stack of pots to prioritize the glassware. As he rushed to deliver the clean glasses, he overheard Zach speaking in hushed tones to a group of servers huddled by the bar. "Tonight's the night," Zach whispered, his eyes gleaming with mischief. "Operation Promotion." Laughter rippled through the group, immediately silenced when they noticed Hank approaching. Amanda flashed a smile too bright to be genuine. "Hank! Just the man we need," she cooed, taking the glasses from him. "Mr. Grayson just told me the most exciting news." Hank's eyes narrowed slightly. "What news?" "He's been so impressed with your work that he wants to try you on the floor tonight," Zach interjected smoothly. "Front of house material," he said. "A real Cinderella story." Something in Hank's expression suggested doubt, but before he could respond, Chef Luis shouted for more clean sauté pans. By the time he returned to the conversation, Amanda was holding out a server's apron. "Here," she said. "Table 12 just sat, a foretop by the window. They're all yours. Mr. Grayson said to start you with one table and see how it goes." Hank hesitated, his weathered hands hovering over the crisp black apron. "I haven't been trained for serving. Just take their drink orders to start," Zach encouraged, his smile not reaching his eyes. "We all have to start somewhere." From across the kitchen, Maya watched with growing unease. Mr. Grayson had left an hour ago for a meeting with wine distributors. She'd heard him tell Chef himself. Something wasn't right. She started toward them, but a party of 6 needed seating, and by the time she looked back, Hank was tying the apron around his waist. The dining room fell into a strange hush as Hank approached table 12, 4 well-dressed businesspeople deep in conversation. Their eyes widened almost comically as he stopped at their table. "Good evening," Hank said, his voice surprisingly clear and professional. "Welcome to Grayson's. May I start you with some drinks?" One of the women exchanged glances with her companions. "Is there a problem with our usual server?" "I'm your server tonight," Hank replied steadily, though his knuckles whitened around his notepad. "Are you new?" asked one of the men, not unkindly but with obvious confusion. Before Hank could answer, Amanda swept in. "I am so sorry about the confusion," she gushed. "There seems to have been a mix-up. Hank is our maintenance person." She emphasized the last 2 words with barely disguised contempt. "I was told to serve this table," Hank said quietly. The businesswoman's face hardened with discomfort. "We prefer our regular server, please." From nearby tables, customers were watching the uncomfortable exchange. At the bar, Zach and several other staff members suppressed laughter behind their hands. "Of course," Amanda said with exaggerated relief. "Hank was just confused about his duties. Weren't you, Hank?" The humiliation was palpable, hanging in the air like a physical presence. Maya had frozen halfway through pouring water at her own table, watching the scene unfold with horror. Then it got worse. As Hank turned to leave, a server named Jason bumped into him hard, sending a tray of red wines sailing directly onto Hank's chest and face. The crimson liquid splashed across his only clean shirt, dripping down onto his worn shoes. A gasp rippled through the dining room, followed immediately by muffled laughter from the staff clustered by the bar. It was obvious to everyone, staff and customers alike, that this had been deliberate. "Oops," Jason said loudly, not even attempting to sound sincere. "Guess you'll need to go back to maintenance now." For the first time since he'd started working at Grayson's, something cracked in Hank's carefully maintained composure. His shoulders tensed, and for one breathless moment, Maya thought he might lash out. Instead, he looked directly at Amanda, then Zach, then each laughing face in turn. His gaze wasn't angry but something worse. It held disappointment so profound it silenced the laughter wherever his eyes landed. Without a word, Hank removed the soaked apron, placed it carefully on a nearby empty table, and walked toward the kitchen. Wine dripped from his beard onto the polished floor with each dignified step. Only 2 people moved. Eli rushed forward with a towel, offering it wordlessly to Hank, who nodded in silent thanks. And Maya, abandoning her table entirely, followed Hank into the kitchen. "They set you up," she said desperately once they were away from the dining room. "Mr. Grayson never asked for you to serve tables. He's not even here tonight." Hank looked at her for a long moment, his blue eyes startlingly clear against his wine-stained face. "I know," he said simply. Then he turned and walked out the back door into the alley. The kitchen staff, who had watched the scene unfold on the security monitor, fell silent as Maya returned to the dining room, her face flushed with shame for a cruelty she hadn't participated in but had failed to prevent. What no one noticed was the small red light blinking on the security camera overlooking the dining room, capturing every moment of the incident, and the barely perceptible smile that crossed Hank's face once he was alone in the dark alley. Saturday morning broke with golden autumn sunshine streaming through Grayson's tall windows. At 10 a.m., staff began trickling in for the brunch shift, trading stories about last night's entertainment, with smug satisfaction. "Did you see his face when the wine hit him?" Jason slapped his knee, recounting the story to a weekend hostess who'd missed the spectacle. "Priceless," Amanda agreed, touching up her lipstick in her compact mirror. "Maybe now he'll get the message that some people just don't belong here." Zach strolled in last, designer sunglasses perched on his head despite the indoor lighting. "Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the greatest prank in Grayson's history. They'll be telling that story for years." The laughter died abruptly as they rounded the corner into the main dining room. The chairs were still upturned on tables from last night's closing, but at the center stood Mr. Grayson, arms folded across his chest, expression carved from stone. "Good morning," he said, his voice unnervingly quiet. "I'm glad to see you're all in such high spirits." Confusion rippled through the group. The owner was supposed to be at a wine-tasting event all weekend. "Change of plans?" Grayson said, as if reading their thoughts. "I decided there were more important matters requiring my attention here." He gestured to the flat-screen TV mounted above the bar, typically used for sports during special events, now displaying a paused security camera image of the dining room. "The restaurant will not be opening today," he continued, his tone deceptively conversational. "Instead, we're having a staff meeting. Mandatory attendance." Chef Luis pushed through the swinging kitchen doors, his face darkening when he saw Grayson. "What's going on?" "Perfect timing, Luis. Please, everyone take a seat." The staff exchanged nervous glances as they pulled chairs down from tables. Maya and Eli arrived together, faltering when they sensed the tension in the room. Mr. Grayson waited until everyone was seated, the silence stretching uncomfortably. Then, without preamble, he pressed a remote. The TV screen flickered to life, showing high-definition footage of Zach hiding the cleaning supplies in his car, Amanda placing the crude drawing on the bulletin board, and multiple staff members laughing as they watched Hank searching for his belongings. No one dared speak as the footage continued, every whispered insult, every cruel joke, every moment of mockery played out in damning clarity. When the video reached last night's wine-spilling incident, several staff members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The footage ended, and Mr. Grayson set down the remote with deliberate care. "Interesting viewing, wouldn't you say?" His voice remained eerily calm. 3 weeks of footage. 3 weeks of watching grown adults behave like schoolyard bullies. Amanda was the first to recover. "Mr. Grayson, we were just having a bit of fun." Hank understood. Hank understood perfectly what was happening. Grayson cut her off. But I'm curious what made you think I would understand or tolerate this behavior in my establishment. Zach leaned forward with his most charming smile. Look, boss, maybe things went a little too far last night, but… Amanda, Grayson interrupted as if Zach hadn't spoken. You've been with us for 3 years. In that time, I've overlooked your occasional rudeness to kitchen staff because your customer service was impeccable. But this? He tapped the remote against his palm. This crosses every line of basic human decency. He turned to face the bartender. Zach, your family connections got you this position, and your mixology skills kept you in it despite your attitude. But no amount of perfect martinis justifies what I just watched. One by one, Mr. Grayson addressed each staff member involved in the harassment: Jason, Tina, Marcus, and 6 others. With each name, his voice grew colder. I built this restaurant on 2 principles, he said finally. Exceptional food and genuine hospitality. Neither of those can exist in an environment poisoned by cruelty. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a stack of envelopes. These are your final paychecks, including 2 weeks' severance. I will provide references stating only your dates of employment, nothing more. You are all terminated, effective immediately. Shocked silence fell over the room. Amanda's mouth opened and closed without sound. Zach's face flushed deep red. You can't be serious. Chef Lee sputtered. Over some homeless guy? We have a full booking today. I've never been more serious. Grayson replied evenly. And Grayson's is closed until further notice. This is ridiculous. Jason protested. We're your core staff. You're throwing away years of… You threw it away. Grayson interrupted, his composure finally cracking. Each time you chose cruelty over kindness. Each time you abused your position to torment someone you perceived as beneath you. Now please collect your belongings and leave. As the stunned staff began to rise, Grayson raised his hand. Maya and Eli, please remain seated. The young waitress and busboy froze, eyes wide with apprehension as their colleagues filed past them, some in tears, others seething with barely contained anger. Within minutes, only Maya, Eli, and Mr. Grayson remained in the silent dining room. You two weren't part of the harassment, Grayson said, his tone softening slightly. But you witnessed it and said nothing to me. Maya's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, Mr. Grayson. I should have spoken up. Yes, you should have, he agreed, but without rancor. However, the security footage also showed small kindnesses: an apple left on a shelf, a towel offered without judgment. These things matter. He checked his watch and smiled for the first time that morning. Now, if you'll excuse me a moment, there's someone I'd like you to meet. Properly this time. Grayson walked to the kitchen doors and pushed them open. They're ready. Maya and Eli sat frozen in their chairs, uncertain what to expect. The kitchen doors swung open, and Hank emerged, but he was almost unrecognizable. Gone was the unkempt beard, replaced by a neatly trimmed goatee that revealed a strong jawline. His hair, previously hidden under a worn beanie, was now styled in a professional cut that complemented his features. Instead of the threadbare flannel, he wore a tailored charcoal suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. Most striking was his posture. The perpetual stoop had vanished, revealing a tall, commanding presence. But it was his smile, confident, warm, and somehow familiar, that transformed him completely. Good morning, he said, his deep voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being listened to. I believe we haven't been properly introduced. My name is Henry Davis. Maya's mouth fell open. Eli dropped the napkin he'd been nervously folding. Henry and I have known each other since we were 10 years old, Mr. Grayson explained, clapping a hand on the other man's shoulder with obvious affection. We grew up on the same street in Cleveland, went to college together, and later became business partners. Henry straightened his cuffs, a gesture so naturally elegant it seemed impossible this was the same man who had been scrubbing grease traps just days ago. Richard and I have built several successful businesses together over the years. Henry continued. When Richard mentioned he was having some staff culture issues at his newest venture, I suggested a little experiment. Maya found her voice first. You're not homeless? But everyone saw you at the underpass. Henry smiled. Method acting. I spent some time there before starting here, establishing the character. The shelter staff were in on it. They're actually beneficiaries of my foundation's housing initiative. Foundation? Eli echoed weakly. Mr. Grayson gestured to the chairs. Perhaps we should sit down. This might take a moment to process. As they settled around one of the dining tables, Henry leaned forward. I own 3 restaurants in Chicago, all farm-to-table concepts similar to Grayson's. We've been planning to expand to this city for some time. But we needed the right team. Grayson continued. Not just skilled workers, but people with the right character. People who treat others with dignity regardless of their perceived status. The implication hung in the air. Maya's face flushed with shame. I didn't do enough, she whispered. I saw what was happening and did almost nothing. Neither did I, Eli admitted, staring at his hands. Henry's expression softened. What you both did was more than anyone else. Maya, I saw you redirect Zach's cruelty whenever possible. Eli, that apple you left appeared on a day I was particularly hungry. He exchanged a meaningful look with Grayson before continuing. Small kindnesses reveal character as clearly as grand gestures. You showed empathy when it wasn't convenient or popular. Which brings us to why you're still here, Grayson said. Henry and I are opening 2 new restaurants in the city over the next 6 months. We'll need managers we can trust to set the right tone. Maya's head snapped up. Managers? But I'm just a server, and Eli's still in high school. Age and position are less important than character and potential, Henry replied. We can teach skills, but we can't teach decency. Eli's eyes were wide with disbelief. You're offering us promotions? After we failed to stand up for you? You showed conscience, Henry said firmly. That's where courage begins. The rest can be developed. A question had been nagging at Maya since Henry's transformation. But why go through all this? Why not just interview people normally? The 2 men exchanged another glance, and a shadow passed over Henry's face. 20 years ago, before any of our success, I really was homeless, he said quietly. For 8 months after a business failure and a divorce that left me with nothing. I slept in shelters, under bridges, wherever I could find safety. He ran a hand over his now smooth jaw. The experience taught me that how people treat you when they think you have nothing reveals who they truly are. Richard gave me a job washing dishes when no one else would look at me. That job saved my life. Grayson squeezed his friend's shoulder. And then he saved my failing diner with his grandmother's recipes and business sense sharper than any chef's knife I've ever used. So this wasn't just a test, Maya realized aloud. It was personal. Henry nodded. The restaurant industry can be brutal, long hours, high stress, demanding customers. Without a foundation of mutual respect, it becomes toxic quickly. What happened here proved that. But it also proved that kindness can survive even in hostile environments. Grayson added, looking meaningfully at the 2 young employees. Maya's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it automatically, a message from Amanda in a staff group chat. Emergency meeting at Westside Cafe in 30. We're planning to call Grayson's investor friends about his insane firing spree. Bring evidence of any labor violations you've seen. Without hesitation, Maya showed the message to Mr. Grayson. You should know what they're planning, she said. Henry smiled. And that, right there, is why you'll make an excellent manager. Eli sat straighter in his chair, a tentative smile forming. So what happens now? No, Henry said, standing and buttoning his suit jacket with the easy confidence of a man who had found his way back from the edge of society. We rebuild. Starting with the 2 of you. Grayson nodded. The restaurant stays closed for 2 weeks. Retraining, rebranding, and a new beginning. With a team that understands what this place is really about. And what is that exactly? Maya asked, still trying to process the morning's revelations. Henry and Grayson answered in unison. Dignity. The 2 weeks that followed transformed not just Grayson's bistro, but Maya and Eli themselves. The restaurant remained closed for renovations, but the work happening inside went far beyond fresh paint and new fixtures. Henry Davis stayed on, working alongside them daily, not as the Hank they had first met, but as a mentor whose experience and vision inspired them both. Maya discovered a natural talent for leadership as she interviewed potential new staff members. The criteria had changed dramatically. Experience still mattered, but Henry had her focus on character questions that revealed how applicants treated others when no one was watching. Ask them about their worst day in the service industry, Henry suggested during a coaching session. You'll learn more from how they describe difficult customers or coworkers than from any rehearsed answers about their strengths. Eli, despite his youth, showed a remarkable eye for systems and efficiency. Henry put him in charge of redesigning the kitchen workflow, a responsibility that had the teenager staying up late sketching diagrams and researching restaurant management software. You're a natural operations manager, Henry told him after reviewing his proposals. That's something that can't be taught. One afternoon, as they took a break from training the newly hired servers, Maya found the courage to ask the question that had been nagging at her. Why give us this chance? I mean, we weren't cruel like the others, but we weren't exactly heroes either. Henry considered this as he adjusted a framed photograph being hung near the host stand, a black and white image of a teenage Richard Grayson and himself, arms slung around each other's shoulders in front of a small diner. Redemption isn't just for those who've done terrible things, he said finally. Sometimes it's for those who recognize they could have done more good than they did. That awareness is where growth begins. The grand reopening was scheduled for a Friday evening. The new sign above the door no longer read Grayson's Bistro, but G&H Provisions, a nod to the partnership now made public. Inside, the space felt both familiar and renewed. Warm lighting illuminated walls painted in rich earth tones. The tables were arranged to create better flow between the kitchen and dining room, reflecting Eli's efficiency improvements. But the most striking change hung prominently on the wall near the entrance, a simple wooden plaque bearing gold letters. Kindness is the only true qualification here. 2 hours before opening, Maya stood in her new blazer, adjusting name tags for the new staff. As floor manager, she had assembled a diverse team, experienced servers alongside newcomers eager to learn, including 2 people from the very shelter where Henry had once stayed. Nervous? Eli asked, clipboard in hand as he checked off items on his prep list. At 17, he looked almost comically young for his assistant manager nameplate, but his confident demeanor had already earned respect from the kitchen staff. Terrified, Maya admitted. But the good kind of terrified. Richard Grayson emerged from his office, Henry Davis at his side. Both men had been fielding press calls all week. What had started as local industry gossip about the mass firing had exploded into a viral story when a customer who witnessed the wine spilling incident shared it online. The reservations are booked solid for the next 3 weeks, Grayson announced. And not just because of the publicity. People want to support what we stand for. Henry nodded. Speaking of which, there's someone here I'd like you all to meet. He opened the front door to reveal a nervous-looking man in his 30s, clutching a small duffel bag. This is James. He's going to be joining our dishwashing team. The staff welcomed him warmly, exactly as they'd been trained to do, not with the forced politeness that had characterized the old Graysons, but with genuine respect. Maya noticed the slight tremor in James's handshake, the darting eyes that reminded her of Hank's first days. She recognized the signs of someone who had been treated as invisible for too long. Let me show you where to put your things, she said warmly. Staff meal is in 30 minutes. Chef Gabriel makes the best pre-shift food in the city. As dinner service began, the restaurant hummed with a different kind of energy than before. The new staff moved with purpose and coordination, treating each other with the same care they showed to guests. When a new server mixed up orders, instead of ridicule, he received calm assistance from his teammates. Near closing time, Henry found Maya watching the dining room with exhausted satisfaction. "You did well tonight," he said. "How does it feel?" She considered the question. "Like we're building something that matters." He nodded. "That's how Richard and I felt 20 years ago. The food business is really the people business. Everything else is just details." The next morning, a local news crew arrived to interview Grayson and Henry about the story that had captured the city's imagination. As cameras set up in the dining room, Henry pulled Maya and Eli aside. "They're going to want to talk to you two as well," he said. "You're a crucial part of this story." "Us?" Eli looked startled. "We didn't do anything special." "That's where you're wrong," Henry replied. "In a world where cruelty is common, basic decency becomes extraordinary. Remember that when you're running your own places someday." Maya blinked. "Our own places?" Henry smiled. "That's the real expansion plan. Find people with both skill and heart, train them thoroughly, then help them become owners themselves. How do you think Richard and I grew from one diner to 7 restaurants in 3 cities? As the camera lights went on and the interviewer began explaining how a simple hiring decision had turned into a viral message about workplace dignity, Maya caught James's eye as he polished glasses behind the bar. The former homeless man, now clean-shaven, well-dressed, and standing tall, gave her a small nod of recognition. In that moment, she understood what they were really building, not just a restaurant, but a place where transformation was possible, for their guests, their staff, and perhaps even the industry itself. The plaque caught the morning light as the news camera panned across it. "Kindness is the only true qualification here." Words that had changed everything.